Hey, welcome back to Meet the Masons. Today, as you can tell from the title, we are going to be talking about our TTC journey. If you're not familiar with that acronym, it means trying to conceive. So we're going to be talking about how we got pregnant, how we went about getting pregnant, and different techniques and things that we use along the way. So if you know me in real life, if this makes you uncomfortable, this ain't the video for you. But if you are on your journey of trying to conceive your first child, maybe even second, then go ahead and stay tuned. Alrighty guys, I'm doing this after talking to one of my friends online, Alexis. Shout out to Alexis. She realized that I never made a video about my TTC journey, and I always meant to make a video about this, but I just never got around to doing it for whatever reason. But yeah, so we're just going into the details, you guys, of, lubricants we use, positions we use, mentality during the process of trying to have our first child. It was such a journey, and I wish Jared could be here so that he could explain like his side of it, but he had to go to work. So I wanted to get this out to you guys because we have some amazing content for you. But anyway, let's get this thing started. Let's start with the mentality of it all, because this is the thing. People don't really talk about this when you get married. If you choose to get married and have children, or you choose to remain abstinent or celibate until you get married and all these different things, like this doesn't really, if you get pregnant and you didn't really mean to get pregnant, like this isn't really for you. But for people who are trying to have kids or aspire to have children one day, then this is really for you. But no one really talks about the mental work that it takes. So I'll give you my background, my sexual history. We ain't going into all those details, but long story short, Jared and I have never had intercourse with anyone before. So when we got married, we honestly were figuring it out together, and I think that was so beautiful on our end, because we were just kind of like, as the Bible said, naked and unashamed. Like, we're figuring this out together. So I don't know, it was just a lot of grace. It was nothing to compare things to. So the reason why I say this is important, because we haven't had prior experience, you wonder, like, am I doing this right? Like, are we actually, like, I know we're doing this, I know it feels great, and I know these different things, but like, is this gonna make a baby one day? And so that was never on the forefront of our mind in the beginning, because before we got married, and even while we were married, we always said we wanted 3 years to ourselves as a couple before we introduced children. Why? If you guys don't know, Jared and I only knew each other for 9 months before we got married, and even that doesn't count. You have to go look at our story. But basically, we met in February of 2013. We got married in November of 2013. But we stopped talking after a month, so maybe February to March, and then we started back talking again October, November, and by that time we got engaged on November 6th and got married on November 30th. So we didn't have a lot of time of getting to know each other before we had kids, so that was important for us that we had that time together. I do not regret it, and I'm so glad that we did. But I say that to say that mentally we were on the same page about children. We talked about it. We talked about, our experiences growing up, about discipline. It was on the forefront of our mind, children, but it wasn't like, it wasn't on the forefront of my mind, but where we stood with children, we were on the same page. So it wasn't like I really wanted children and he didn't, and all those different things. Not for the first time, at least. So anyway, the 3 years are approaching. Like I said, our anniversary was November 30th. So I was on birth control the entire time. The type of birth control I was on was low estrogen FE, which is for people who had low iron. It was a pill form that I took every single day. I was supposed to take every day, but I was pretty on top of my birth control, and I was on it for 3 years. Prior to then, I had never been on birth control. So I got on birth control when I got married, or like a month, well, it wasn't a month beforehand, but probably like a week or two before I got married. So I was so clueless, but I just took my birth control and I just assumed it would work. My cycles prior to being on birth control were pretty normal. However, I never had 28-day cycles. Like, there were some months that I didn't have a period, and I never knew exactly why. But when I started tracking my period, I found out that I don't have a normal 28-day cycle. So if you have a 35-day cycle and it's only 30 days in a month, clearly you might skip a month ever so often. So that was kind of like my journey with my cycle. And then I got on birth control, and so it didn't really regulate more, but my cramps were far less, and my cycles were a lot lighter, and I absolutely loved it. So we were approaching going, on year 3, and we always said we wanted to travel, like do a big trip and travel before we had children. So we planned a big birthday trip with some friends to go to Egypt. We actually went to Africa. We have a travel vlog, if I can put it somewhere around here, y'all. But it was really fun, and I just felt like, man, I think we should get off birth control, because we don't know how long it's going to take for us to get pregnant. And so I think when I realized we were approaching the 3rd year of our marriage, that's when the anxiety kind of came of, dang, okay, now it's time. We want kids. We don't want to wait any longer. But dang, are we about to do this now? Like, are we ready to do this now? And so we both agreed that I would get off of birth control in September. So on that trip, I ended my birth control, and that was probably when the anxiety and, just the thoughts happened, because lo and behold, I've never had sex before without being on birth control. It was a new thing. Like, it was so brand new, so I just didn't know what to expect. And I was like, my body has never gone through this. Now my body was used to being on birth control, and now it's off. So how is my body going to react? Am I going to have heavier cycles? Am I ready for that? So these are the mental things that are happening. So then during that time, now I'm going crazy. This is when I found out about the TTC community, about the Trying to Conceive community. And guys, it's a whole community. If you are not familiar with this community, it's a real group of people, of women who are trying to get pregnant, some who have fertility or infertility issues, some who are just trying to get pregnant, some who are married, some who are single, some who are in relationships, some who are doing it through in vitro fertilization, which means they take their eggs out and they get their eggs implanted, or it's so many different ways, but it's so many different women. And I was introduced to that community, and I was blown away. They have acronyms for everything. For like cervical mucus, it's CM. Whenever you're talking about sex, they say BBD, which is baby dancing, or BD, baby dancing. And so it's literally an acronym for everything. So when you're in these chats, they have apps. You know what a person is talking about, or they literally have a dictionary where you can go and refer to these things, so you don't have to, keep spelling out all these things. Guys, whole crazy world I was opened up to. So I was like, dang. So I'm in it, and I'm trying to find different ways to conceive. So to make a long story short, I don't really know how to make this short. But along the journey, I learned about lubricants. Okay. I learned about there are different ways to measure your body to know when you're ovulating. So I was so clueless as to pregnancy and how to get pregnant. I didn't know that after you had your cycle, then your egg needs to be released, and you go through ovulation. So during that time, your egg is being released and going down the tube, and that is when you can get pregnant, because the sperm can meet your egg and impregnate. And then it's released, and then you get pregnant. I don't know if I'm explaining it fully, because it's been so long since it's been a couple years. Anyway, that's when I found out about ovulation. So I'm like, okay, so people would track when they're ovulating, because when they know when their egg is being released, then they can get pregnant. You cannot get pregnant just 30 days of any 31 days of the month. You cannot. You can only get pregnant after you ovulate, in most cases. So I found out that, yeah, it doesn't work like that. Like, you don't have sex one day and then like you're pregnant the next day. That's not how it works. Like, the sperm also has to be able to reach the egg, and if the egg is even been released, like, it's a whole thing. So that's when I learned about that. And then, so for some people, they would track their body temperature to measure if they were ovulating. Some people would pee on a stick, just like you pee for a pregnancy test. And some people would just go by their app because their body was so regulated that they knew. Some people could feel when they were ovulating. Some people would measure their discharge. This is going to be a TMI video all the way. So, yeah, discharge is like the liquids and, you know, things that come out your vagina that are healthy, that are okay. And they would measure about, like, literally the texture of it, if it's sticky or if it's loose, if it's a lot or a little. You guys, I was introduced to a whole new world that I was like, whoa. So now at this point, I'm looking at my body and like wondering, okay, am I ovulating? So for me personally, I did not check my temperature. I thought that was too much because people would literally check their temperature every day, and if it went up or down a certain amount, then they knew they were ovulating. I didn't do that. I use my app. I use a period, I think it's called P Tracker. I use the app to measure that, and it would tell you about when they thought you were ovulating, which for me was kind of always wrong because I don't know. Anyway, so I use the app, and I also got so in tune with my body, and I could tell when I was ovulating, and I also measured my discharge. So I didn't measure it, but I just noticed it because for me personally, because of the birth control that I was on, I found out from my midwife, because of the birth control that I was on and how long I was on it, it made me very dry down there. So if I did experience more discharge than normal, it was very noticeable for me. For some people who weren't on birth control and, you know, discharge is normal for you, then it may be a little difficult to really recognize. But for me, because I was so dry down there, I knew that if I had more discharge than normal, I was probably ovulating, which was typically true. So that kind of made it easier for me to know when I was ovulating. So I did that for a couple months. So the first month I did that, and we didn't get pregnant. So took a test, and you can wait till literally how many days after. So people would literally count their cycle days. It's called CD1, CD2. So for some people, CD10, which they've already had their cycle, is past their cycle. It's like, say you have your cycle day starts on the first day of your cycle. So say your cycle ends on cycle day 4. Some people could see if they're pregnant or not by cycle day 10 or cycle day 13. Mind you, it's 30 days in a month. So you know, I was checking early. I was checking when I would possibly be pregnant, and I did not get pregnant that month. So I was like, okay, cool. Wasn't expecting that. I guess also in my mind, very optimistic. It won't be hard for us to get pregnant. Like, no big deal. So then October came around, and I was going through this process with a friend. I didn't really share a lot of it with Jared, mainly because I didn't want him to be stressed out. Like, I was obsessed with my body. I was obsessed with TTC. I was literally obsessed with all things trying to get pregnant. So then October came around, trying to get pregnant again. And also I want you guys to know about the 2-week wait. So I think after your cycle ends, there's a 2-week wait for you to finally see if you really are pregnant. And that's the best time to measure, or it could be after that time between to your next, I don't know. Anyway, there's a 2-week wait and people would stress the heck out during that time. And I think it was like during that time you can tell if you're pregnant or not. And that was like the most stressful time after you've had your period. So that was crazy. Anyway, so we go to October. I found out that I had this rash on my back, and it was forming patterns, which was so odd to me. It was like a circle, and it was coming up towards my chest. And I got really concerned because it was so itchy. It was an itch I had never experienced. It was like a burning, itchy. It was so annoying. So I go to the doctor, and I found out that it was shingles. Me, a 26-year-old girl, 25, however old I was. Let's see how old I was. I was 26. I was like, why am I getting shingles? Just so you know, shingles is for people who are 65 and older, or if you've never had the chicken pox. Well, guess what? I've had the chicken pox before when I was younger, and clearly, I'm not 65. So the lady looked at me and she was like, I don't understand why you have shingles, or it could be induced by stress. So she looked at me and she was like, are you stressed out about something? And Jared was there, and I was like, but the reality of it was that I was stressing myself out, my body out over trying to get pregnant, that I, activated a virus that should have been dead on the inside of me. And that's crazy. And that's why, you guys know that my day skill is I'm a counselor by trade. That's what I got my master's in. I'm not a counselor right now. I'm doing entrepreneurial endeavors. However, anyway, so I know the importance of stress. And for me, I do pretty good at managing my stress, but I had never experienced anything like that to the point where stress was taking a physical toll on my body. And I was just like, this is crazy. So me trying to conceive during that time, I tried to take it a little bit easier and like not try to stress myself out about it. But mentally, I'm just like, man, I just want to get pregnant, and I'm trying not to stress out about it. But I want to be pregnant, and I want to make sure that we're doing this right. And yeah, so I tried to not stress myself out as much, but I was still tracking my period. So October came and went, and I didn't get pregnant again. So by that time, I'm just like, okay, is it something wrong with me? Are we doing this right? Yeah, we've been married for 3 years, having sex for 3 years or so. But are we doing this right? I don't know. I don't know. So these things are going through my mind. So I'm reading more stuff. And then I found some information about lubricants. Now, we have been using lubricants because, like I said, this is TMI, but because of the birth control, I was very dry down there. So it did interfere with sexual intercourse. So, we would have to use lubricants sometimes, and which is normal for a lot of people. But for some people, they're like, I never had to use a lubricant. So kudos to you. But because of the medication I was on, it's just something that we use. So I was doing research, and and I found out about lubricants at my my bachelorette party, and they were telling me about it, and my married friends swore by it. They was like, you have to have it. So that's how I was introduced to lubricants. I didn't really know much about it, but I had it with me from my bridal shower as gifts. So I was like, okay, let's use it. And this is the one that we use. So it's called Astroglide. Anyway, I'm not going to tell you how we used it, but look it up, go figure. Anyway, so we were using this, and I was reading a post that was saying that lubricants can actually inhibit sperm from getting to your egg. How about that? Because the sperm needs like a free path, like a path of least resistance to swim all the way up. Oh my gosh, they have a journey to take to get to your egg. So if you have this lubricant smeared everywhere and it's kind of thick, it's hard for that sperm to go up and reach your egg. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. This is mind blowing. Oh my gosh, maybe this is the reason. So for me, it was like a light bulb went off in my head, like, bet. So we're gonna stop using lubricants? We're gonna make this happen, or are we gonna use a different one? So a lot of the TTC community actually suggested this one, which is called Preseed, if you guys can see that. Yeah, so it literally says for use when trying to get pregnant. So I'm like, bingo, bet. I think this was more expensive than the Astroglide. I think the Astroglide was like $67, and this may be like 12 or 15. I'm not sure. But it says the sperm moves freely through Preseed and other lubricants limit sperm motility. I was like, oh my, this was a game changer, y'all. I was so happy. But when I saw how you had to use this, I was like, oh, heck to the nah, baby. We ain't about to be using this. It's like, how bad do you want to get pregnant? So this is the lubricant. But they were saying literally to put, and it's still in the wrapper, because this is how serious I was about, like, I don't think I'm gonna go this far. I don't think I'm just trust God. But you would have to put, actually I think they give you 3 of these bags. So it looks like literally we only use 2. We only use this twice, guys. Because I was like, I feel like sex isn't sex anymore. We're doing it to get pregnant, and now it's a lab experiment. And so clearly, you guys, you see these things are still wrapped, because my mind could not. I was like, you don't have to inject me to get pregnant. Like, that was too much for me. But we used it. We used it in November, and that's when we conceived. So can I say that it's because of the Preseed? I don't know, but can I say that we probably helped the sperm from being blocked by using the Preseed? I would say yes. Preseed, though, feels like you pretty much don't have any lubricant. It's a lot less silkier and more watery than the Astroglide. The Astroglide has more slip, even though it's water-based. But we used that in November, and that is when I had my last cycle. No, we used that at the end of November. Yeah, end of November. So I had my last cycle on November 26th. Our anniversary was November 30th, 3 years ago. So literally we got pregnant in 3 years. So somewhere in the beginning of December is when we got pregnant, and we used that Preseed. Honestly, when I look back, I think we used that Preseed before I had my period. Seriously, but I have to go back to my notes, and we may have used it one time after my period. So that's why I can't solely say it was a Preseed, but maybe in my mind mentally, it helped me to relieve stress, to say, oh, this might be my answer, you know? And so it let me let go a little bit more. Probably even during intercourse, I was probably a little bit more free, because I was thinking, wow, I found my answer. I'm more relaxed. It's gonna happen. On top of the fact, you know, this time we're praying and believing, and you guys saw my video when I was getting those negatives, and I was wondering what was wrong with me. I was wondering if I really had a problem. And some people, you guys, their journey takes years. Some people TTC for 1 month and they get pregnant. For me, it took us about 3 months. And so I remember getting comments on the video like, you never had a real journey, because this only happened in 3 months. And it may seem like it was only 3 months, but that's not true, because in the whole 3 years of us being married, we were preparing our mind for wanting to get pregnant. And that whole time we were taking pregnancy tests, because even though we said we wanted to get pregnant in 3 months, there were times where my period was missed and I felt like I had symptoms, and I was open to being pregnant. So it wasn't like, you know, I was going to be upset if I got pregnant. We were open to the idea of getting pregnant all throughout those 3 years. So for me, it wasn't just, my TTC journey didn't necessarily just start in September of 2013 and getting pregnant pretty much in December 13. It started, you know, maybe a year after we were pregnant. So I'm not about to cry. Y'all know I'm pregnant. But, you know, it was kind of hurtful to see that sometimes. But, like, I get it. You can be so callous when you've been in a situation for years and you see someone seemingly get their victory before you. So I can understand the rage and stuff. But it was like, honestly, no. My journey was longer than that. It's just that we actually started trying with all of our heart and physical selves, you know, by year 3. Nonetheless, we got pregnant. So that was our journey. So using the tracker, I was always watching my my discharge. If I had more discharge than normal, I knew that I was probably ovulating, which was almost always true. However, this was one of the things. So most women, when they find out that they're pregnant, because I was in my TTC weight and getting close to after Christmas, during Christmas time and New Year's Eve, I found out I was pregnant on December 29th, 2016. I don't know why I've been saying 2013, but 2016 is when we got pregnant. Excuse me. So what was I about to say? Oh yeah. So when some women get pregnant, they have more discharge, and that kind of also lets them know that they're pregnant. Y'all, still dry. I was still dry, so I was like, surely I probably am not pregnant once again, because if I was, then XYZ would be the case. Some of my symptoms, how I knew I was pregnant: I got this random pimple on the side of my boob, never happened before, and I believe I felt implantation. Implantation is when the egg meets your uterine line, I believe, so you can feel it connecting. And for me, it literally felt like it hurt. It was like zing in my uterus area, and I felt pain after that for probably a couple hours, and that had never happened before. So I was like, I think that was the baby implanting. So that was kind of some of the clues that I felt like, you know, I was pregnant, and they were true. Now, that was for baby number one. That was in 2016 with baby River. Now, the second time around, we got pregnant, I believe April 2019 this year. After having River, we always said probably 18 months or afterwards we would be comfortable getting pregnant again, because I kind of want to have more children, most of my children by 30, if not all of them by 30. And we didn't want to have a huge time gap between our kids. We wanted them to be close in age, because we feel like sometimes when you're closer in age, you're also closer in general. So River, we celebrated her birthday September 2018. So 24, October, November, December, January, February, March of 2019 is when she turned 18 months. April is when I got pregnant. Now, if you see the common theme in our story, it's something that we are unified about and something that we declare. We are unified in our marriage about this is when we want to have kids, and we say it. We say it after people ask us all the time. We always say after 18 months. So that was a common theme with us getting pregnant this time. But we said this time around we would not try. We would not go through the stress that we did the first time around. And we didn't. And so something to also note, I had not had a period since November 26, 2016. November 26, 2016. Well, after that. So let's say December 2016 up until March or February 2019. You guys, that's 2+ years of no period. Why? Because I was breastfeeding. And one of the benefits for me, it doesn't happen for a lot of women, but for me, or not all women, but a lot of women, it happens to. When you're breastfeeding, it delays your cycle. It delays ovulation. So if you're not ovulating, you're not having a period. Because ovulation is when the egg comes out, and if it's not implanted, it goes into your uterine line, and then your body is trying to dispose of that egg. So that's why it bleeds, to get rid of the uterine line to let the baby pass. And sometimes that's how miscarriages happen, when the body doesn't recognize that there is a baby in there. It's so many different reasons why, but sometimes your body will get rid of a child because it either doesn't recognize that it's pregnant, or it's basically like trying to have a period even though you're pregnant. That happens in some miscarriages, not all of them. Nonetheless, I hadn't had a period for a long time. My period came back in February, I believe. So February, River was 17 months. River turned 18 months in March. April is when we got pregnant. During that time, when my period came back, I was like, what the heck? Because I was still nursing. But I started to wean her. That's when she went back to daycare. She started going to daycare at the end of January. So she was not around me as much. So she wasn't nursing as much. So my body was like, oh, bet. you about to have this cycle now. So that's exactly what happened. So she nursed less, got my cycle back. So now I'm just like, oh great, now I could get pregnant. And now the question was, should we still use protection? Because during that time, we decided that we would not go back on birth control. The side effects of birth control for me were, eventually I started to gain a little bit more weight. I've always had a pretty small frame, but I noticed weight gain in certain areas, like in my face or different areas that I really contributed to it being hormonal and from my birth control. The dryness, I told you guys that I experienced, and I just didn't want to chemically be under that anymore. So as a result, we used condoms, which was not amazing. It wasn't amazing. So we went back to using condoms, and then I don't know at what point, honestly, we stopped using condoms in November of 2013, because this whole time we knew that even though you're not having a period, somehow you can still get pregnant. So it wasn't until our anniversary, November, so go back a couple months last year, we stopped using condoms, because we were just like, you ain't getting no period, you know, we want to get pregnant sometime soon. But we didn't think it would be right away by any means, and we didn't think my cycle was going to be coming soon. So when my cycle came back, I was just like, oh shoot, I could get pregnant. And we were not in agreement for a while. I was like, do you want more kids? Because immediately after we had River, Jared was kind of like on the fence. He was like, I love River. He saw what I went through and all that entailed, and he was like, nah. And then towards the beginning of the year, this year, he was like, I guess I'm more open to it. And when he got more open to it, yeah, that's pretty much what happened. So within a month or two, I got pregnant, and the shock of my life. And so that's why, you guys, I was so shocked out of my mind, because I just got my cycle back, and I just wasn't planning for it. I just wasn't even thinking about that at all. Like, I wasn't trying or anything like I did last time, but I saw myself like kind of looking at my body, because now at this point I'm very super aware of my body. I've been breastfeeding, I've had a child, I've been pregnant, I've done the TTC journey, so it's like I cannot ignore my body. So I knew when I was ovulating, but during that time, I don't know how I missed it, and that's why I was shocked. So that's kind of like our TTC journey. I hope that helped you guys along the way. My biggest tips would be, if you're trying, honestly, I would say try Preseed. I think it did help. If it didn't help physically, mentally it helped me. Yeah, I can't even lie. I think this was a game changer for us. So I would say try this. Make sure you're on one accord with your spouse. Me personally, I would say be married if you're going to be planning on having kids, because parenthood is not for the faint of heart, and it's not easy. It's not always easy with help. Without help, I'm not really sure where I would be. I'm not sure where I would be. So, you know, everything's a personal decision. Children are a blessing, but I believe in the Word of God, and I believe that that children should have their both parents. So I think you should be married, if you ask me, if you're trying to go on a TTC journey. That's my spiel. But also, just be in agreement with your spouse. Talk about it, declare it, pray about it, and believe together. And it may not happen right away. It may not happen in a month or in 3 months like it happened for me. This was years of us being in agreement, if you guys realize that. Years of us talking about having children that year. Another thing was, I wrote in my journal. I believe in journalizing, which is kind of like scripting your life. And it's kind of like writing a vision and making it plain. But I wrote in my journal that year, September 2016, I said, God, at the age of 26, this is the year I become a mother. And I was so serious, and I wrote it with all my heart, and I believed it, and it happened. So that was another tool that I use for conceiving as well. But if you can, don't stress yourself out about it. Honestly, I'm not going to lie. You can't take the stress 100% away, but don't stress too much about it. You're going to be aware of your body. You're going to be thinking about it. You're going to be in a 2-week wait and want to take a pregnancy test every single chance we got. And you guys, I just want you to know, I never bought fancy pregnancy tests. I always use Dollar Tree pregnancy tests. They work for me. I never bought an expensive one. All my pregnancy tests came from the Dollar Tree because I knew I was going to be taking a couple of them. And for me, I kept a couple of them on deck. I would keep probably like 2 or 3 in my bathroom just to have them on deck, just in case. And yeah, those would be some of my tips. So I hope this helped you guys out and kind of clued you guys in on how we went about, you know, our journey to conceiving our first and second child. Everyone's journey is different. I don't even know what my third time is going to be like next time, you know, if God blesses us to have a third child. So I don't know, but this is my story and this is what worked for me. And I think if you use a lot of these principles, then they will work for you as well. So I love you guys and I will see you later. Bye.